Hello, everybody. Husky's Ghost here. Well, Husky's Ghost hand. Yeah, maybe I should just talk like this. Yeah, okay, maybe not. Anyways, well, I figure I'm going to go ahead and kick off October very casually this year. And for me, being a somewhat horror channel, I thought it would be kind of interesting on showing off what movies I watch. That is themed to horror, or horror comedy, or anything related with horror or Halloween. And with October pretty much around the corner, well, I figured what better way to start off than to show off what movies I feel was great to watch during the month of October. And maybe some of these movies will actually perk some ideas for you guys if you've never seen any of these movies. Some of them are great watches, and some of them I have not even watched yet before. And I will definitely tell you which ones those are. Being such a horror nut myself, I still have some movies I haven't really seen before. But without further ado, there's a lot to go through. And like I said, hopefully I'll have a movie or two that you guys might be never seen before and get interested in. And the collection I do have are usually pretty much worth watching. So, hopefully that will tickle the funny bone a little bit for some of you. So, let's go ahead and get this started. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with the old generation of movies that I own, which is DVD. And there's a few good DVDs that I do have that is pretty much good to watch on Halloween. The first one is actually a classic. This is actually a film that actually kind of began the genre of found footage movies, and that is the Blair Witch Project. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody and their grandmothers has seen the Blair Witch Project, and if you haven't, well, you're definitely missing out on some part of history within horror. It's actually pretty unsettling, and actually some people didn't like it, and that's okay, and a lot of people did. And the acting was so good that actually, fun fact, people thought this was an actual found footage, and then people found out they were just a bunch of actors, and then it pissed a lot of people off. So, but that's a whole different ballgame for another time. But pretty unsettling movie. Not a lot of jump scares. It's really atmospheric. So if you really like atmospheric movies, I recommend checking this one out. Another fun watch for Halloween is a little more child friendly, and it's a little goofy, and that will be Monster House. This is a fun movie. It really is. Actually, when I first saw the trailer, I was pretty interested with it. And it is also part of, Steven Spielberg. So you can't really go wrong with his name attached to almost anything nowadays. But this is actually kind of based around Halloween. And it's a pretty fun movie and pretty spooky probably for the kids. There are some moments, especially with the house itself, that it kind of goes a little intense at times. But definitely a fun watch. And something to gather family, friends, and if you haven't seen this one, definitely worth checking out. Speaking of family friendly and fun watches, there is one cartoon series that a lot of people know about, and that is Scooby-Doo. But there is one movie that seems to top them all, and that would be Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. This movie is pretty much the all-time favorite Scooby movie within the Scooby community. Not just because of the style and the story of it, but it's something about it has this charm. And one of the main things is that what they're facing are real creatures. They're always after people with masks. This time they're actually dealing with the real thing, and that's what's pretty scary. Of course, the sequel happened, and I kind of tossed the whole thing out of the blanket, but we don't talk about the sequel. But Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island definitely has its moments too, especially for being Scooby-Doo. It's a pretty good watch, and I'll be surprised if you have not seen this movie yet. You're definitely missing out on a good piece of Scooby flicks. So, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Now, this one I have seen a bit. It's not the original, but it's something I have seen bits and pieces. I will have to rewatch it again sometime. And that is the Michael Bay remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And of course, this one's still in its wrap. I haven't really watched it since I got the DVD. I've seen it once or twice on TV. Remember vividly of it, but that's about it. This is probably the most I've seen about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's something I will get into later on. But this is the remake of it. So if you're looking for the original, gotta look for the original. But if you want to make sure you're not mistaking the original for the remake, just know that this one was directed by Michael Bay. aka Mr. Director that likes to go boom boom. Now, people got their opinions on this one, especially myself, part of the gaming community, that video games have not had the best adaptations when it comes to movies. This one, in my opinion, thought it did pretty darn close to being a good one, and that would be Silent Hill. Silent Hill definitely has its moments in the movie. It's not 100% accurate within the lore of Silent Hill, but you gotta be a hardcore fan and nut job and nerd of Silent Hill to really have that stuff bother you. But if you're just a casual, you're just looking for a good flick, Silent Hill still delivers on it. And what I really do like about the Silent Hill movie is that this is probably pretty close to what it's trying to do within the original game, especially the camera angles in the beginning portion of this film when the main character enters Silent Hill. And it's phenomenal when it hits that jab just right. So, Silent Hill, definitely a good watch. The sequel, I can't really say too much for. Now, another good classic, it's more Americanized, but it is based on something that is Japanese. And the Asians do not mess around when it comes to horror. And that would be The Grudge. Definitely a good movie. Definitely a cult classic to some. Can't go wrong with The Grudge, especially the ghost herself. Very unsettling. I have seen this a while back. It has creeped me out before. And I did pick it up on tape, but as you could see, it's still in its wrapping. I just haven't really got around to watching it again. But maybe this year will be different for me. But The Grudge is definitely a good watch. If you haven't seen it and you want something that's kind of spooky and Japanese, well, this is a good film for you. Now back to lightheartedness, but definitely not family friendly. If there's a horror series that we can go to for a couple laughs, but also pretty adulty, I think we all know where this is going. That would be the Scary Movie series. Now, to my opinion, I think Scary Movie 1, 2, 3, and 4 were good. Beyond 4 is where the series kind of started losing its footing. Some people say it started losing its footing after the first one, some say after the second one, some people say the third one was the last good one. To me, I think it was all the way up till 4 that it started to losing itself. But definitely, the first one will always be the all-time favorite. It's just if you're looking for a movie that parodies horror flicks all over, such as The Exorcist and Scream and Signs and The Ring and all that, these are pretty good to watch, and they're actually pretty funny as well, especially the first one. If you pretty much like some dark humor, these are some good movies to watch if you haven't seen them. So yeah, good watches. And that will cover all the DVD horror movies that I have. Not really much, but we all kind of have to move on. That's going to get to the point it's going to be digital only, and hopefully that will be beyond the time when I am dead, because I love my physical media. But now is my Blu-ray collection. I will go through the singles that I have. Now, of course, we got our all-time classics of Stephen King, and one is actually more of a miniseries, and the other one was more definitely a movie feature length. So I will go ahead and feature these both at the same time, and that would be Stephen King's It and Stephen King's It, the remakes, the 2-part film. These are good movies. Definitely good. A lot of people will say that they're overhyped. Some people will say they're not scary at all, especially the originals. But overall, clowns are scary. Clowns are always been the fear and phobia of a lot of people. So, of course, having a clown as the main killer, even though, spoilers, but still, having the clown as the main killer, it really does up it up. And it's a lot of psychological horror within them too as well. But the It series are pretty fun to watch. And if you're looking for more classic, I would definitely also look into the original HBO series. I think it was HBO. Is that what it says? HBO? I don't think it says in the back. Well, I know this was more of a mini-series. It's definitely more longer than what this is. And of course we know the book itself is very chunky. But definitely good movies. If you're looking for a clown horror film, well, these are definitely on the recommendation list. Now, this one's a lot more modern. It came out not too long ago, but it's actually considered a favorite within a lot of people. And of course, it takes time around Halloween. And that will be Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Of course, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is indeed based on the children's book Scaries within the same name, and the books itself always had some controversy behind them because the sketches within the books are definitely horrifying looking, especially with people around my age still find them pretty creepy. The stories themselves could be pretty goofy. Some of them could be kind of unsettling, but it was always about the monsters that always threw a lot of people off. And the movie definitely delivered thanks to Del Toro doing some effects of the creatures. Can't go wrong when he is involved. And I believe a sequel is indeed in the works for this, which is pretty good. This was a pretty good film, and I like it. If you have not seen it, definitely give it worth a shot. Now, as you can see, my little light right here is Sam. Sam from Trick or Treat. This is definitely a movie to watch in the month of October. It's definitely double points if you watch it on Halloween. Trick or Treat is a phenomenal movie. I love this movie a lot. I actually, for the fun fact, the first time I watched this was actually last year. I was pretty late to the party, but I'm glad I was able to finally catch up to Trick or Treat, and it turned out to be one of my most favorite Halloween films of all time. And I could see why a lot of people gave this movie a lot of praise. It's definitely 4 stories in one movie, and Sam, he is one heck of a character. If you have not seen Trick or Treat, do yourself a favor, find a copy, watch it online, whatever you can. This movie is good. Now, these movies, people could say that they are spooky enough for October and Halloween, or they're just spooky enough in general for being creepy. To me, I think it's just more of the extreme of how these movies are handled, more than they are being horror, because I never really felt horrified watching these. Or maybe I'm just a sick person, but they're still good movies, and that would be the Saw series. And we got Billy the doll right here, or you could say Jigsaw, however you want to name him. This is the collection series, the complete movie collection of Saw, all the way up to the final chapter. And of course, I do have the Jigsaw, and I know Spiral just came out, but I have not gotten Spiral yet. I am still trying to catch up to the series. I'm on the final chapter right now, then I'll be jumping on Jigsaw, and then sooner or later it'll be Spiral next. But these movies are definitely good watches. They're kind of good to watch whenever. I can't really say that these are really October movies, but people like to put them within the same category, and you can't really go wrong with them. If you like a lot of gore, well, these are definitely where to go. Now back, when we were talking about The Grudge and like some Japanese horror films, well, this is another American movie of a movie that was originated from Japan called Ringu, and this one is called The Ring. And a lot of us pretty much know about this movie. It's about a cursed VHS tape of a ghost girl coming out of a well, and it comes and gets you in 7 days. Now, this movie, sorry, hiccups. This movie definitely traumatized me when I was a kid. Ever since I watched this, I always went to bed not facing the television. That was like that for a good while. Of course, I got over it. But this was actually a pretty creepy movie. Looking back at it now, I could see it has its downfalls. But I always say that The Ring was the original creepypasta before creepypasta became a thing. Because, it involved a cursed VHS tape of a ghost that haunted the tape, and things go really bad. That sounds awfully familiar with some stories within the creepypasta community. But this is definitely a good watch. If you have not seen The Ring, do yourself a favor, check it out. Okay, now we're starting to get into movies I have not really seen, but I've heard good things about, and the reason why I got them I will explain. This one will be John Carpenter's The Thing. My dad actually liked this movie, I believe, and it's definitely an oldie, but I'm always told it's also a goodie. And The Thing I hear is actually pretty creepy. It's kind of a bit of, one of the characters is actually a creature, and they're trying to figure out who this creature is. And you can't really go wrong with John Carpenter. I mean, he is the one that is mostly famous for the Halloween series. So, and The Thing, I have seen bits of it, but I've never seen the movie in full, and I have noticed it is kind of creepy. So, The Thing. Now this one's a little more sci-fi, but it did hit some creepy moments, and that is Phoenix Forgotten. Not a lot of people talk about this. It did come out during a kind of a strange time in theaters. I think it was competing with other movies that it just got overshadowed really badly, and was also produced by Ridley Scott, which is known for the Alien series. Phoenix Forgotten is a found footage documentary-styled movie about the Phoenix Lights of Arizona. If you have not heard about the Phoenix Lights of Arizona, that is a pretty interesting event that has happened in Phoenix, Arizona, of a UFO sighting, and to this day is still considered one of the most mysterious sightings in American history. So it's pretty cool they made a movie about it. Of course, it's fictional within, movie story wise, but taking the place about the Phoenix Lights is actually pretty interesting, and the movie itself is actually pretty creepy at some points. So pretty interesting to watch. Now back to some family-friendly moments. We are going to go to the live-action Scooby-Doo films, especially 1 and 2. People do have their opinions about the Scooby-Doo movies. I actually do find myself enjoying Scooby-Doo 2 a little more than the first one, only because Scooby-Doo 2 had a little more of the original Scooby-Doo vibes. But of course, it's Scooby-Doo. It's about monsters, Mystery Inc. Can't go wrong watching something like this for October if you're looking for a little more lighthearted monster madness. Now, another movie I have not watched yet, and I did open up the wrapping for this one. I will explain why for a minute. And that is an old movie called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is another alien invasion movie. A pretty chilly movie from what I've heard. And it's pretty much about these aliens taking form of humans and is trying to take over the world, like any other aliens would do. The reason why I opened up this one and not yet watched it was because this is about the time when Alien Covenant was coming out, and I kind of wanted to take a look at the exclusive Walmart cards that was inside it. But other than that, I have not watched it yet, but hopefully I will be able to watch it this year. And it's definitely got its name within the horror genre, and I got to see the reason why. So, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, I was a little skeptical if I wanted to add this one to the list because I found them to be more of a romance horror than just horror in general. But I'll go ahead and just add it because, it's horror. And that is one of the modern releases of The Invisible Man. Now, I actually did like this movie. This movie actually surprised me a little more than I thought it was going to be. I can't say that it was actually scary, but it was more unnerving. It definitely had its atmosphere for sure. And I could see this is kind of more maybe of like a horror Valentine kind of movie than it is October. But, when it comes to slashers and the killer, because it's kind of a role that you just have to add it to the October list of horror movies. But The Invisible Man, of course, is a remake of the original, and it's definitely far from just what the original is like, so it's definitely kind of more of an original movie idea with the same name. But still, The Invisible Man, can't go wrong. Now, again, same thing, a little debatable, but this was actually a little more horror, but it's definitely a flasher flick, and it's actually a fun one, and that's why I want to include it, because we gotta have some fun horror movies once in a while. And that is Freaky. So if you don't know what this movie is, it's pretty much Freaky Friday with a killer twist. That's literally what this movie is. You got the killer, and then you got the victim. They switch places, kind of like Freaky Friday. And now the victim is the killer, and the killer is, the victim. So, pretty fun watch. I actually really enjoyed this movie. It definitely had its funny moments. And you can't go wrong with Vince. He does a great job. And I gotta go give Catherine some credit too with her acting. She did really good, especially when the body swat actually happens. And it's just like, wow. Pretty good watch, so if you haven't seen this, definitely check it out. Like I said, it's Freaky Friday, but with killer. Now, this one definitely has its fan base. And I will talk about this just a little bit, about my opinion, and that is The Conjuring. Now, I'm only adding the first Conjuring on this because 1 is the only one I kind of own. But 2 is because I'm also not a fan of the direction they go with The Conjuring. Of course, they are based on the Warren cases, our original grandfather and mother of ghost hunting. And you got to enjoy what their cases are like. They're the reasons why Annabelle is so popular, and the Annabelle horror and so on. And they got their controversial moments too. The Conjuring is a good series indeed, talking about their cases, but you know, Hollywood is Hollywood, and they'll have to kind of go overboard with some of the horror. And I'm afraid that when movies do that, people will look at ghosts a little bit wrong, like, oh my god, everything is creepy, everything's a demon, oh, they're out to kill you, when they're not necessarily 100% like that. Even though what the cases the Warriors did do, they were indeed unsettling with some of them. A lot of them did involve with possession and creepy ghosts and stuff, but not all of them were like that. And I know a lot that happened within these movies did not actually happen, but it's just based on their cases, but not what happens in their cases. But the first Conjuring was indeed a pretty creepy movie. I would give it that. Even though the Hollywood does Hollywood up their cases, it's still a pretty creepy movie. And it's still worth the watch, especially knowing just kind of what they looked into at least. Now, this is another movie I did watch bits and pieces of, but never as a whole, surprisingly, and that is the original Poltergeist. I did watch the remake, but the original, I only remember bits and pieces of it. If I did watch this, it was a long time ago. But it is the Poltergeist. It is definitely had its controversies as well. Pretty scary stuff. And you can't really go wrong with just how creepy it is with the ghost and, of course, the girl and the television. And itself is just within the paranormal. And Poltergeist is definitely one of those movies that will actually freak you out at night. And I could tell for back in its time, this was a pretty scary movie. And again, you know, Steven Spielberg. Now this one is a very recent movie, and I just picked this one up. I have yet to watch it, but everything I've heard about it, I heard it positively good. And that is the Gojam Haunted Asylum. This is a origin film. This is actually a Korean horror movie. So, of course, it's subtitled in Korea, so I will have to read through it. But, other than that, I hear this is a pretty creepy movie, and not a lot of people like it, only because there wasn't much jump scares and stuff. And that's actually one of the big problems that we have with horror nowadays, is that jump scares are heavily relied on nowadays, and just completely throws out the atmosphere and everything. Even though that does add to the atmosphere, jump scares ruin a movie for me. And I actually like that there is a recent movie that does not rely on jump scares too heavily. So, honestly, if you are... I'm just saying, this is my opinion, but if you actually love horror movies because of their jump scares, then, you know, more power to you. But I think that's one of the wrong reasons to enjoy horror flicks. Because if you're easily frightened by jump scares, then I can't really say that we're on the same opinion on horror movies. But atmosphere always hits it well, and I hear this film really delivers on that one, so I'm excited to watch this and see how spooky it really is. Now, I'm glad that this movie is picking up steam again. A lot of people are talking about it again, and it's actually pretty good. And it's definitely a B-movie horror series that is worth the attention, and that is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I have watched this movie God knows how many times. It's one of my favorite B movies of all times. It's about these killer clowns from outer space, and they try to take over this town, and how they try to do it is hilariously creepy. They use cotton candy, they'll use like pretty much living animal balloons, and they'll shoot popcorn at people, and those popcorns will turn into like mutated clown creatures. And it's just, what they do is great, and the clowns themselves, especially the effects and how they laugh and stuff, extremely creepy. Even though this is a B movie, they definitely hit it pretty hard with the clowns themselves. Very creepy clowns. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, great watch. Now, these movies I do actually feel kind of fell off their footing down the road, and that is the Paranormal Activity series. This one is still in its wrap, of course, when I got this, but I have seen most of the films. And this one does come with pretty much most of them. Paranormal Activity, the first couple ones were pretty good, pretty creepy, but it did kind of start falling short a little bit. I think that this started to get kind of a little dumb down the road, but it kind of overdo it here and there, and that was my phone going off. But Paranormal Activity, at least the first couple of movies, they are pretty creepy and pretty unsettling, and I actually do like the atmosphere that they do with the Paranormal Activity series. And, you know, they are pretty close to how paranormal actually acts when a haunting, you know, does start going on. And I do, give him credit for being a little realistic on certain aspects of it. Especially, like I said, the first couple films. Paranormal Activity, pretty good watch for October, especially if you're looking for a spooky time. Now, one of these movies is kind of based around Halloween, and the other one isn't, but they are still pretty good watches around this time, especially if you grew up with the books, and that would be Goosebumps. This is actually the first one with Jack Black playing as R.L. Stine, and it is actually a pretty good thing. It's pretty much Jumanji, but with Goosebumps, pretty much. All the books come to life, and they have to try to get them back into the book. So you got Slappy there, and nice references within the Goosebumps universe. So if you read a lot of the books, you'll catch a lot of references. And like I said, one of them is based around Halloween, and that is the sequel, Halloween 2. Or not Halloween 2. Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween in some areas. And this is actually more based around in the time of Halloween. Slappy comes back. It's kind of more of a Slappy story with this one. I actually do appreciate that Slappy has more of more screen time. This is kind of more of his movie than it was on the first Goosebumps. Even though he was the main villain in the first Goosebumps, he's kind of more like in his own story in the second one. And that's actually pretty cool. And I did skip this one out in theaters because I literally thought it was just retelling what the first one was, but this one was actually more different than I thought it was going to be. And I actually enjoyed it to a point that I actually got it as well. So I grew up with Goosebumps though. I can't go wrong with these movies. They're fun to watch, especially Halloween 2. I keep saying Halloween 2. Goosebumps 2, especially around the Halloween season. So, good watches. This is an original, and I have seen this one a long time ago, and even though I didn't see it as scary, but it was pretty unsettling, and that is Stephen King's The Shining, or Stanley if you want to just go by the director's name, but this is a Stephen King story, of course, based in, it got the original inspiration of the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. So of course The Shining is big over there, and I have seen this, and it's actually a good movie. It really is a good movie, don't get me wrong. It is actually pretty creepy, especially when he starts going crazy. It does get pretty creepy. Is it as scary as people make it out to be? In my opinion, no, but that does not mean that's not a bad film, though. It's a really good film. Because I think sometimes human beings can be the worst monster of them all, so I definitely hit them pretty good when it comes to that. Now, this one's an M. Night movie, and I know a lot of people like his films and other people don't. Cough, cough, Avatar. Or Last Airbender, I should say. But one of my favorites out of his is Signs. Even though the movie itself is actually kind of stupid, especially when they figure out what the weakness of the aliens are. It does kind of hit you in the head a little bit, but overall it is a pretty good movie. The reason why I really like Signs as much as I do is because of the atmosphere. They actually hit the mystery and just the progress of what's happening pretty well, and the pacing is actually not too bad, especially the first reveal of what the alien looks like, how they first found out. Like the first thing you see the alien pretty much is still one of the most scariest scenes in this film. I'm sure if some of you have seen this movie, you might know what I'm talking about. But this is definitely a good movie. Signs. Now another Stephen King movie, and this one some people like and some people didn't, and it's stupid, but it's also good. And that is Maximum Overdrive. Now, if you have not seen Maximum Overdrive, it's about these, about pretty much automobile vehicles. They come to life, have a mind of their own, and they just start taking over, and they'll start killing people and all that. And there is a reason behind why these vehicles are taking a life of their own, and I will not spoil that if you have not seen the movie. But it's actually a pretty good watch. It's dumb at some points, it's one of those kind of movies that's kind of like, oh wow, that's cheesy, but sometimes that's what makes them good. And Maximum Overdrive is definitely one of those movies that is worth having in your collection, especially if you're a Stephen King fan. So definitely worth checking out. Okay, so here is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Still in this wrapping. I have not opened this up yet, and actually I have not really seen this movie. I maybe have seen bits of it, but I have never seen this in its full from start to finish. And I do plan on changing that this October. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is definitely a masterpiece and considered one of the best horror films down in horror history. And you cannot go wrong with Leatherface, man. It's just, he's creepy. He wears the face of people that he killed with the chainsaw. I mean, he's kind of the reason why the chainsaw became the most scary weapon of all time. And the whole premises of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, especially the fact that it's actually based on a real guy that actually did have a pretty ill-minded issue of killing people and using their body parts for furniture and all that. Pretty creepy stuff. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, definitely worth a watch. Now, this is another M. Night movie I actually did vividly enjoy, and I've only seen it once, but I do have to watch it again sometime, and that is The Happening. This is a pretty interesting movie. What I do remember out of this one is that pretty much nature takes over. I think it's like plants and trees and all that. They're just sick of the bullshit, and they're just taking over, killing people, suffocating them and stuff. You know, it's the air. It's something along with, you know, the plants and so on. Something within the air is killing people. And that was a pretty interesting take that I thought with The Happening. And again, this is around the time when Alien Confident was coming out. So, definitely interesting movie. Now, these movies, you could say these are more disaster movies than they are horror. But they do kind of hit the trauma bone with some people. Especially the first two, and that is Final Destination. This is the 4-movie collection set that I got of Final Destination, and definitely one of those movies that would get your butt paranoid for sure in the real world, because this is death doing his part, doing things that are sometimes nearly impossible for, you know, logical reasons, but just how some of the deaths are executed. Very creepy stuff, and it really does take your paranoia to the next level, especially out in the real world. So, okay, another slasher film here that I actually vividly enjoy, and it's actually more of a fun watch than it is a creepy one, but it does have its moments, and that is Happy Death Day. Some people did not like this movie. Some people thought it was actually pretty dumb, but I actually liked the premises of it being Groundhog's Day, but with a horror twist, kind of like, you know, Freaky was. And of course, it's by the producer Get Out, The Purge, and The Visit. Happy Death Day, to me, I think is a good film. It's a good horror film. And what it's about is about this college student who is reliving her birthday over and over and over. And the thing is that every single time that happens, she's being stalked and killed by this mysterious killer. So it's trying to figure out who that killer is and why she's having these issues. And it's a pretty fun watch. And part 2 does explain more of how, you know, the cycle actually works out, but yeah, I won't say much about it. But pretty much a fun watch, especially for a slasher. Now, this one I will only add the first movie because the other ones are a little more action than they are horror, and that is The Purge. People do love this movie, and for a good reason. It's kind of realistic about how crazy people can be, especially when there is a one night or a crime is legal. And The Purge hits pretty well, but especially the first one, because this one is actually taking place in a little home, pretty much in a single home, and they're trying to, well, let's just say trying not to get killed by these maniacs who are after this guy who was running into their house and taking shelter in there. And these freaks actually want a piece of his body. So now they're stuck in a situation where, you know, they're kind of trapped and you get these crazy people outside that can kill you. It's a pretty suspenseful movie to watch. I actually pretty liked it quite a lot. Of course, the sequels to explore more of the outside area of The Purge, but this one's a little more suspense within horror, and it's a good watch. Now, this one's definitely more of a fun watch than it is creepy, and that is Zombieland. We all know Zombieland, I'm pretty sure by now, and it's actually a pretty fun zombie film. It's nothing too creepy or anything too serious. It definitely has this goofy side, and you know, you actually feel like you're in with these guys or within their adventure. And it's definitely just worth a watch. I mean, there's really not much I could say about how fun this movie was. It's fun, it's funny. He has a pretty unhealthy addiction to Twinkies, I will say that. But overall, good watch. The sequel was pretty good as well. I still prefer the first one more though. Now this one, people will have their opinions on. It is a direct copy of a Spanish film called Wreck, and that is Quarantine. This is still a pretty scary movie. This is actually considered one of my most scariest movies I watched, I think. And that's just because of the atmosphere of the movie itself, it's just creepy. It's about this news archer who was doing a interview with firefighters. They got a call into a apartment building, pretty much, and that apartment is now under quarantine. Kind of like current events going on. You're stuck inside. Of course, there's something going on within this apartment building, and it's more dangerous and more creepy than it is. You could say this is a zombie film. Some people can say it's a little more. But definitely, regardless of the situations within this movie, especially behind the scenes, it's still a really good watch. And if you want to watch the original, which is Rec, which is in Spanish, that's worth watching too. Now, this one's more of a cheesy film. If you're more of a Five Nights at Freddy's person or whatever, again, you know, cheesy flicks, you gotta have them once in a while with horror. And that is the Nicolas Cage film, Willie's Wonderland. I did like this movie more than I thought I would, actually. I thought it was actually going to be a pretty stupid movie, but it turns out to be a pretty fun watch. Of course, it is dumb. It is cheesy, especially the fight scenes. You could tell it's just kind of weird seeing Nicolas Cage beat up a bunch of animatronics. Looks like he's just beating up a bunch of plushies. But the atmosphere of it does hit the nail sometimes on parts, and it's a fun, goofy watch, especially Nicolas Cage. If you're looking for something similar of, let's just say Nicolas Cage is Doom Guy, and these guys are the victims. Let's just go ahead and say that. This is a pretty fun watch, and don't take it seriously, because if you take this film really seriously, you're not going to enjoy it. But if you just take it as what it is, a fun watch, and pretty much a janitor being a complete badass, pretty fun watch. Now, speaking of origin films, there is one that is kind of on the list, and I will explain why. And I'm not talking about the American remake, but the original Gojira, or Godzilla for a lot of people here in the West. This is the original first Godzilla. Now, why am I saying Godzilla as a horror film? Well, if you watch the original Gojira in Japanese, you'll actually see the setting of the film is a lot more different. The tone of it is a lot more different. And Godzilla, you know, is actually about the nuclear radiation of, you know, war and stuff like that. This happened pretty much right after World War II ended. And this is nature's way of paying back of the damage that human has done to it. And this is pretty much just Godzilla wreaking havoc in Tokyo. And if you watch the original Japanese, it's dark, it's sinister. You'll see, you know, a mom saying goodbye to her kids because they're going to die. It's tragic. It's horrifying. And really, if you do watch this in Japanese, it hits the tone just right. This is the only movie that Godzilla was truly scary. This was like the end of times. So, the original Gojira, definitely a masterpiece, especially in his horror, because that's what kind of like Gojira is. It's kind of a horror monster that's, you know, later on taking, you know, starting to fight monkeys and stuff. But Gojira, definitely horrifying. Now, another movie that some people can say is not too horrifying, and other people will, but I will go ahead and say the first film at least definitely was. That was because of the Velociraptors. But I am talking about Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is indeed a horror film in my book, and that's just because the T-Rex is horrifying when he is around, the Velociraptors, how smart they are. You know, this movie definitely had its moments. Though people can say this is more, you know, not really a horror film, but if you really look into it and look into their situation, it really is a horror film. And, you know, dinosaurs are cool. I love dinosaurs, but if you really look at them as the threat that they are, they can become pretty creepy as well. So Jurassic Park is definitely a good watch, especially for a bit of a horror dinosaur flick. Now, this one is more of an indie film, and it's definitely worth a watch. I did kind of throw up a little bit towards the end, but the rest of the movie itself was pretty good. And that is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Now, we do have Brian Cox here as well, and you know, the movie itself is pretty good. It's about these two people who work at a morgue. You know, they do autopsies of, you know, dead people. They find one body that is very mysterious. Of course, you know, when you find a mysterious body with no name, it's Jane Doe for the female. And who she really is and what she's causing these two poor suckers is very interesting. The twist is there. I mean, once you figure out who she is, that's where things really start going downhill for these poor guys. But definitely worth a watch. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but if you have not seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe, definitely do yourself a favor and watch this, because it's actually a pretty good film. Now this one, this kind of depends on your taste of things, and I have watched this one maybe about 3 times in my lifetime, but it's actually a pretty good film, and that is Jaws. I mean, when it comes to Steven Spielberg, you can't go wrong with how he makes his movies, and Jaws is definitely one of the worthy mentions. It's just, it definitely was a time when this movie came out, people were afraid of the water. That was really legit a thing. I didn't even think people were afraid to go to swimming pools because of Jaws. This just did a lot of things right that got people scared. Of course, nowadays it's not as scary, but Jaws still holds out to be a great film. And especially, I mean, look out, man. Sharks are creepy. Now, here's some movies I have not really seen, even though that they are popular. I've only seen the first one, and that is Scream. Can't go wrong with Ghostface. I've always dressed up as Ghostface when I was a kid, but that was just because that was the costume and I watched a scary movie. But with Scream itself, I have not really seen the movies. I've only seen the first one, but this one also counts as Scream 2 and Scream 3, and I have to hunt down Scream 4. And I know there's a 5th one being made, so I'm definitely going to be trying to catch up with this. Hopefully I get caught up this month. And yeah, Scream is definitely a good watch. It's more of a modern times kind of slasher, and not really with like others. You know, this one's kind of more like the killer is just crazy. That's all it is. So, Scream. Now, these movies, I've only seen the second one. I've never seen the first one. And, of course, the director kind of has some controversy now going on because of allegations of his. But, of course, it doesn't, you know, take away the fact that these movies were pretty good. And that is Jeepers Creepers. I've seen the second one. I've only remembered the second one. I never really watched the first one. And if I did, I probably don't remember too much about it. But the second one, I know for sure. Jeepers Creatures, though, the killer, you know, he's creepy. He's actually pretty creepy, so that's all I can say. I can't say I remember too much about the movies, though, especially the second one. I mean, even though I've seen the second one, it's been a while, but it's Jeepers Creepers. Okay, so these are a little bit more in their tin cans. Some of them I watched and some of them I recently just watched. So, one of them is It Follows. Now, this one, people say they like and people say they didn't. I actually really like this film, and that's because of how they used the killer in this one. The killer is a supernatural being, some kind of creature, some kind of ghost. I mean, you could pretty much say whatever you want about them. But I love how they used the creature. The creature is pretty much a spirit that goes after people with lust. So, like, if it's hunting down somebody, they have to have sex with a partner, and then that ghost follows that person, and they have to pass it on, you know. So, like, if you want this creature to stop following you, you have to have sex with somebody to get them off your back. Until they're dead, then it goes kind of backwards, and it's like, okay, in that case, back on you again. So, I kind of like the fact that this creature kind of goes against people who are just trying to have a good time, you know. So, it's a pretty interesting, unique take on how a killer kind of just acts, and it's very interesting. And using its motive of people having sex, it's interesting. So, pretty good watch. Okay, so another film, I actually just watched this one last year, and from start to finish, and it was pretty creepy. And I could tell you back in this time, it was pretty intense for people, and that is The Exorcist. This is indeed the extended director's cut in steel Blu-ray. And The Exorcist, for its time, it's creepy. I know I kind of messed up the actor that played the little girl too. And of course, it's based on an actual event of a poor boy who got possessed by a demon, and you know, things happened. But The Exorcist itself, though, definitely a classic. I mean, look at that face. It's adorable. But overall, pretty creepy movie, and it has one of the most iconic theme songs ever as well. So if you look at this now, with modern times, you know, you could definitely see the effects are not as scary anymore, but back in the day, it made people faint. That's how badly scary this movie was. Now, the same could be said about this upcoming next movie, and it's the same person that made Scream, and that is The Nightmare on Elm Street. I can't talk. A Nightmare on Elm Street. You cannot go wrong with Freddy Krueger, man. He haunts you in your dreams. Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, is definitely one of those movies that actually has a creature that is just different. You know, kind of like how it Follows was. He is a killer that's able to kill you when you sleep. This guy just give the characters a reason not to fall asleep, and for good reason too. And how they're able to defeat him, it was difficult. It was definitely difficult for the main character. But I really like Nightmare on Elm Street. This was actually a pretty good watch. It's definitely old. It definitely shows his age, but it will always be an all-time classic. And you know, Freddy Krueger. Mwah. Now this is more of a fun Halloween watch. It's like a couple movies I showed, and this is Ghostbusters. We have all seen Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call Ghostbusters? Definitely good watch. If you have not seen Ghostbusters, what the heck have you been doing with your life? Definitely watch this. And of course, Afterlife is coming out this November. We don't talk about the girl version. That one does exist. I don't know what you're talking about. But Ghostbusters 1 and 2, pretty good. And I also do have the video game as well. The video game is a good way to play Ghostbusters as well, especially the fact that it actually has the original actors reprising their roles in the game as well. But I am also excited to look for Afterlife. But Ghostbusters 1 and 2, especially Ghostbusters 1, good fun watch. So another film, again, is a fun watch, and it's definitely an absolute classic, and a lot of people love this ghost, including myself, and that is Casper. Of course, Casper takes place around the Halloween time as well, so definitely a good watch around October. And Casper, the friendly ghost, you just can't go wrong with Casper. And of course, the dual ghosts, they're just crazy, they're kooky, and they're also caring, even though they're a bunch of assholes. But the movie itself, really good. The ending really will give you a bit of a tearjerker as well. But Casper, we all love Casper, and it's definitely a good October watch. So I'm going to go ahead and go backwards on this one for a second, and then we'll go ahead and go for a purpose. This is the remake of Child's Play from the producers of It, and the person that voices Chucky is where's his name? Where's his name? I can't even remember his name. What the heck? I cannot remember his name from the top of my head, but it's the same guy that plays as Luke from Star Wars. But anyways, he voices Chucky in this one. But of course, this is the remake of Child's Play. A lot of people did not seem to like this movie, and you know, understandably so. I can understand why. I do like this film though as a remake, as its own thing, because you know it's more realistically to think of. You know, a Chucky AI dog goes haywire because a guy pretty much lost his job and he wants to take revenge of the company pretty much by making him into a killer doll. So he's very messed up, Terminator like Chucky. I just kind of like the direction he took it. It's different. I can't say it's as good, but it's different. I actually like how Child's Play remake kind of was handled. I actually liked it. So that's just me. But that is not to say that I am a fan of the original Chucky's as well. You know, got Child's Play 2, Child's Play 3, Ride of Chucky. Of course, it got very weird. I mean, you had two dolls having sex. But the first couple Chucky's were really good. I even do have the Cult of Chucky as well. It's hanging somewhere on my shelf over there, but I don't want to bring it out because, you know, I'm talking about Chucky as it is. But of course, the first Chucky will always be the instant classic. Child's Play 2 is good, 3 is alright. And then it just started getting really, really weird. I can also tell that they're starting to have a bit some kinky lesbian stuff going on. Not that I mind, but it's just kind of a weird direction Chucky's just starting to get to. It's like, okay, you're having sex with dolls, and now you're showing your fetish side a little bit there, Chucky. But anyways, Child's Play, definitely good watches, especially the original. And you know, I will watch the TV series whenever I get a chance to it. I mean, it's still Child's Play, it's still Chucky. As long as he's still a killer, you know, doll killing people. I mean, what else is there to really ask for? Now, a good old collection that is pretty much a crime to not watch around October, especially on Halloween, and that is, well, of course, Halloween. This is indeed the Scream Factory cheaper version of the collection set of Halloween. It does come with all the films, the original John Carpenter's to the Rob Zombie films, and I also do have the recent Halloween continuation of the first Halloween, and of course I will be watching Halloween Kills. But Michael Myers is always my all-time favorite slasher character. He is the man when it comes to Halloween. And you know, they're good watches. Even the Rob Zombie ones, I will have to admit, you know, even though people do prefer the Rob Zombie ones more than the originals, I do like them. The second one, not really so much, but the first one is pretty good. The only thing I have against the Rob Zombie film is kind of the obvious one. Michael Myers was just a kid that just snapped. He just lost his mind. There was no reason for it. He was just evil one night, and there's no explanation whatsoever why. He was just crazy. Rob Zombie gave him an origin story, and that defeats the purpose of the mystery of why Michael Myers is who he is. So the origin story is kind of what killed it a little bit, but you know, if you look at it as an alternate universe, you know, it's pretty nice. And Laurie is definitely not herself in the remake as well. She's just too crazy. But you know, like I said, it's Rob Zombie, and it's still good films. Don't get me wrong, the Rob Zombie ones are pretty fun to watch too, but I will always enjoy the originals. Now, I will have to go say the first Alien. I do have the Alien anthology here, and it comes with pretty much the Alien films. But the first Alien will always be a good horror film because it's taking place in space. You are against a alien organism that you know nothing about, and he is killing your crewmates left and right. Very smart creature, and is actually pretty scary. So, the first Alien, definitely creepy to watch. One of my all-time favorite monster movies of all time as well. So, Alien's definitely a good classic to pick up and watch. Alright, we're reaching towards the end. These are films that I have really not yet watched, but I've maybe seen bits of. One of them is The Fly. Now, this one I do have The Fly collection by Scream Factory. I have seen the remake with Jeff Goldblum, but the original and the sequel of the original and the third, and also the remake of the second Fly, I have not seen, but I have seen the remake though. It's kind of been a pattern with me, hasn't it? But I will watch the original whenever I get around to it, hopefully sometime this month. The Fly though. And it's just creepy how a guy would turn into a fly. It's just, ew. Now again, pattern, only seen the remake, but I will see the original sometime, and that is the Omen. Again, this is a Scream Factory release that comes with the Omen. Omen 2, Final Conflict, Omen 4, and the remake of the Omen. So, definitely creepy kid, definitely a creepy kid that is nothing but trouble. Definitely creepy to watch though, very unsettling. The Omen. Now this one I have seen bits of, not fully though. Hopefully I could be able to watch at least one or two of these this month. And these are the same people that did like the animatronics of the Killer Clowns and the costumes and all that. And that is Critters. Again, Scream Factory. Comes with Critters, Critters 2, Critters 3, and Critters 4. This is actually also kind of the start. I think Critters 3 is actually kind of the early start of Leonardo DiCaprio. So pretty much a good way to kind of see where he kind of began. Of course, I've only kind of known him most from Titanic. But Critters, cheesy movies. I remember bits of it, but I never really watched it fully because I was a really young lad at the time. So, but you can't go wrong with these little fur balls wrecking havoc. Now we do have the ultimate cock blocker himself, and we can't go on with horror without speaking him. And that is... let me try not to pour these out. And this is the Scream Factory collection set I got of Friday the 13th, the Deluxe edition. And this one does come, whoopsie, with all of the Friday the 13th films, from the first all the way up to the remake. I've only seen a few of these, so it's quite a bit for me to catch up still. I'm going to be on part 3 here soon. And I'm going to try to work my way up slowly to each and every Freddy movie. So, or not Freddy, Jason movie. So, Friday the 13th, of course. And of course, I gotta save the best for last. Save the instant classics. The instant monsters that made monsters today. And I do have a collection set of them, and that is the Universal Classic Monsters. Dracula, Invisible Man, The Wolfman, The Mummy, Creature of the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Phantom of the Opera. Of course, they are all here. And this collection I have comes with 30 movies, all the way up from 1931 to 1956. So, classic black and white movies. These are just films you just want to, just watch and enjoy. Something to play in the background during a spooky time, having a meal with your family. You could just have like one of these movies just popped in the background and just enjoy your vibe of Halloween. You can't go wrong when it comes to these classic monsters. I mean, they are what made horror movies today, so definite respect to these movies. And that is all that we got, it's actually quite a bit, so got like a bunch of movies here and there, and of course you got Sam just enjoying the time. So that is all the horror movies I actually have, and there are still more out there I still have to get, of course. But if there are any good horror movies to watch, hopefully some of those that I listed will give you a bit of a good idea and good reach of what you might be able to watch this month. So, of course, if you like the video, guys, well, you know the drill, and let's enjoy October. Until next time, catch you later.